What's today? What is it? December? No, not December. Jeez, November 12th, 2023, 192nd edition of Scions of the Southland. I'm here with Jake. Akshay is out with his family having a good old time, so it's just us today. Let's go through some programming reminders before we get down our slate. For one, we're gonna have a Scions Extra this week. If y'all remember my Survivor content with Carson Garrett. My interview with him got cut short after about the 12-minute mark because an international pop star kind of crashed the party. So we're gonna go for round two, and it's gonna be really fun. If you like Survivor, this will be for you. If you don't like Survivor, that's fine. This is more of just a thing we just want to do for the fun of it. So, but it'll be good.
What if you just Survivor curious, Jack?
I think you'll learn a lot no matter what. The idea is we're gonna dig deep into some stuff and find out a lot about the background of what it's like to be on the show. Which there's a lot of interviews that happen like that, but it'll be cool to get his introspection for as a active student, that goes to tech and has to be part of the big old international thing. So
what's about the only excuse that somebody in our neck of the sports and content verse would give us to talk about it. So I think it'll be a cool intersection of that. So
yeah, it'll be a good time. Some other programming reminders. We've always got our weekly articles on FromTheRumbleSeat.com. We have our mailbag, which has been very lively. So thank you to everybody who has been contributing to that. We got our Tuesday thoughts that Chris Paschal will have. Maggie Scroggs is doing the things we think we know articles, and Ben Tankersley will have the advanced stats recap up in the midweek before we play Syracuse. And then this is the 192nd episode, Jake, which means we're 8 away from 200. I'm thinking we're gonna do something. That's all I really know for sure.
Something.
We're gonna do something. We're going to do something. I'll make that commitment. We're going to plan something. We're gonna make it a little bit extra special. How and what? To be determined. We still have to have those. Still have to plan it. But we're gonna
no free. I was gonna say no free ads, but I'm always a fan of doing a live show at maybe our world's favorite brewery. But we'll see. There's plenty of things out there. Maybe we could go live somewhere else. I feel like it's a 200th anniversary. We got to make it like an event type thing.
I think there's got to be something we could do. Maybe I'll make a call to at our dear institute since we thankfully know some folks.
Akshay and I have done episodes recorded from Bill Moore before when we were students, and we could just kindly ask them if we could use a Skybox to record the podcast.
I think that's absolutely a doable thing, actually, because we know some folks that work there.
Yeah.
Let's move on to this past weekend, or yesterday to be more specifically. So I was at the game yesterday at Clemson. They got into the press box. It's really tight and cramped, but let me tell you, man, the food that they have in that press box. It was a noon kick, which means they were serving breakfast, which means they had shrimp and grits. And oh my God, is it so freaking good. It was the best.
I hope they didn't catch those in Lake Hartwell. I don't know if I would trust
they did not say where the shrimp came
reservoir from. Shrimp, but I don't doubt it was good.
It tastes so good, man. I could not believe what I was seeing. But they serve good food at Tech's press box as well. It's usually pretty healthy. They got a good they'll have some good pork, they'll have good salad and stuff like that. But it's just when you go to a place that's been winning national championships, you see where the money can go when you can rake in that kind of stuff, and that's just one of the ways.
River,
and that's just one of the ways it happens.
Jack, I gotta say, yes, we talked a little bit before we got on air. You noted that your first ever football game was at Clemson many moons ago as a wee lad, and this is the first time you've been back, correct?
Yes, it has. Yes.
What were your thoughts on so context? This is the first Clemson away game that I have missed since coming down to Tech in 2016. So I did not go this year. I've been to 3 away games, and I generally find that it's quite an interesting, I don't know. I love the rec going out there. I think the hill's a little bit overrated, but it's certainly something to watch everyone else get into it. I think it's a weird, casual observer, and you're in the press box, so you got to be a little bit more, I guess, nonpartisan. What was that like sitting in the press box? For something like that.
Yeah, thankfully I'm just kind of tucked in the corner. I was sitting right next to Tech's special box where some of the donors and Jay Bad and his kids were in there for some of it as well. So I was kind of in view of everybody. I actually grew up partially a Clemson fan because my grandfather went there. So I was well ingrained into the traditions, and kind of just had them as like, if we want to see them do well, before I had any true Georgia Tech allegiances. So like I was like the running down the hill thing. The first time I got to see that was super cool. This is the first time I've been. When I went there like 10 years ago, though, they were still doing the balloons. Now they got rid of the balloons because the it was a very toxic hazard to the lake. What they had, just balloons, just hundreds and hundreds of balloons falling in there every week and not cleaning it up. So that part was sad to miss, but it was fine. This was also the military tribute game, and so at halftime, the both bands performed together for the entire.
Wow.
Yeah, for the entire thing was them, and they had a really moving, just kind of like, I don't want to say a fake burial thing. They had some really good tributes, for the Service Academy and for those that have passed recently that were from South Carolina specifically, in service.
Nice.
So they were when me and my friend got there, parked in the media lot, and one of their SID people was driving the golf cart back and forth from the media lot to the stadium so that we didn't have to walk as far. And he made a note of like,
which lot did they put y'all in? Down by the softball stadium or what?
No, they put us in by like in an admin building, like right outside where you need placard entrance to park on campus.
Gotcha.
So it was really convenient. Even if you walked, it was like a 6-minute walk. It wasn't hard at all. But yeah, he noted it's like, like the military tribute stuff is like a really big deal, and they were really prideful about that. If you haven't been to a Clemson game, they do take their halftimes super, super seriously. Like they are extremely quiet for the band. They made note like, there's gonna be 80,000 people here, and you're gonna be able to hear a pin drop at halftime. And sure enough, that guy was correct.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool experience. They're also just the nice, like, I cannot emphasize this enough. They are the nicest people in terms of just like hosts, in terms of just true Southern hospitality of people coming to your place. They know they're going to beat you, but they're gracious about it for me. I ran into like 15 people that said, "We're glad you came, man. We're glad you're here."
That floored me as a sophomore in college the first time I went up there. But the last time we played there, the 14-8 like lightning delay game. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was a long day. But it was right when section 103, I promise they did not pay me to say this or anything like that. But it was right when they first launched. And I was wearing the first piece I got from them, the I'm a Rambling Wreck for Georgia Tech and a Hell of an Engineer shirt, just walking down the main street in Clemson and opposing Clemson fans, multiple. I tweeted about this back when I actually like used Twitter. Like they came up to me and were like, "Oh my gosh, we love your shirt. That's so cool." That because I think this was before they were on like home field too. So like kind of retro's kind of been in lately. I say as I'm in my like bomber jacket with a Section 103 shirt under that. I'm a big retro guy. But they're like, "Oh my gosh, we love that. This is a thing." I'm like just walking down the street being like, "We're so glad we're here. We love your shirt." I was like, this is so weird because one time I did get like a little heckled by like some they're like teenagers. You know how kids can be. I say as if that wasn't me and our ilk 5, 10, 15 years ago. But I will say my one thing about Clemson on game day, it's a little tougher to get into all the very tough to get into some of like the classic spots. Like you cannot go to the Smoking Pig on game day and not wait for like hours and hours.
Yeah.
You'll never get a table at the SO Club, which is why I found that like men's basketball, their softball, like, oh my gosh, they sell out every game.
Yep.
So I'm a little bit lucky that my sister just puts me on the list and I walk in kind of thing for the Louisville Clemson series. But like weekends like that where there's still something going on, probably be cool to see a soccer game up there. Their soccer teams are pretty good. And Riggs is a pretty phenomenal venue right off of downtown. But and coming up, going to swim meets there for the club team, you get to see a little bit more of the town, but oh my gosh, it's cool to just like get out of the city and go to the game. So I hope it was a good experience. I say, kind of quietly backdooring a segue into the football part. Probably not much if we're being political.
No, it wasn't good. I mean, we were lucky to have a lead it's kind of, in hindsight, it's like, wait, we were winning this game halfway through the first quarter, which is kind of surprising. But that was the one time we had a timely thing go our way and took advantage of it. Thankfully, I remember the moment writing, "Oh my, like, okay, this is actually like what good teams do: take advantage of a mistake and get a score." And we did score again for about 40 minutes or something like that. After that, it was rough. the football game itself, yes, we lost 42-21 to the Clemson Tigers. We dropped to 6th in the ACC, 4-3. In the conference record, our record is now 5-5 overall, with Syracuse next. We'll get to the importance of that game, although I don't think y'all are educated. Y'all know exactly why we need to win next week, considering who we play next. After that,
well,
so
Jack,
yeah,
I want to make one point before we get too far away from the fact that Tech was leading.
Okay.
Tech was also leading at one point, I believe, in the 73-7 loss. I think we opened that up with a touchdown.
Yeah,
and
we did.
Promptly
Yeah.
gave up 73 points. So the fact that, and kind of one thing that we workshopped before we went live, is we played about as poorly as I think we've seen Tech play this year. But again, up against a team that's extremely talented.
Yeah.
No matter what Tyler from Spartanburg says, I would say pretty well coached. I think Riley's a good offensive coordinator, and it looks like things are finally clicking a little bit the last couple weeks up there. And all that to say, we kind of saw about as quote unquote, I guess, disappointing. I don't know. I've never really gone into these Clemson games and been like, woo, we got a shot. But I did that yesterday. And the fact that, I mean, yeah, they scored some points late to kind of claw back a little bit, but 42-21, we've seen worse, right?
We have. I was there for the entirety of the that aforementioned game you mentioned. But yeah, no, I mean, I thought we were going to win, honestly. Like I definitely did not have as good of a read on Clemson's defense as I thought. But granted, I feel like there's the sliding doors moment here. There's a couple of them, and they are sadly both Eric Singleton drops. There was a couple of those that would have been long completions, possible touchdowns early in the game. And if we get those, at the outset, this game is completely different. Clemson has to play a different style. We wouldn't have to be punting in bad situations. Penalties weren't really a huge deal, I think, for other team. There was a couple bad ones going both ways, but nothing that would have truly changed anything with this score. We got our touchdown because Clemson attempted a fake punt early and they failed to convert, and then we scored on a Haynes King touchdown run. We did it, we stopped them pretty well defensively up at the beginning. That's where I was weirdly confident. Zeke Biggers was killing it down low. He was getting inside. They could not run up the middle for anything. Then they figured out if we just let Cade throw, good things will happen. And so weirdly, it was our pass defense that more killed us today, less than our run defense. But beyond that, we cannot throw for anything. I think we have all noticed now that when Haynes King gets a little rattled, it can slip. He can slip a little too quickly. It does just things go south offensively as soon as he's just in a bad spot. And that's kind of what happened. He had a yard's worth of completions at almost at halftime. There was nothing happening whatsoever. And Clemson, especially in the second quarter, were able to keep drives alive on 3rd and 4th downs. They had a lot of 3rd and 4th downs, in that go for it range, but outside of field goal territory, but too close to punt. So they were able to play 4-down football way more often than one usually would think. And they were able to convert on those. So that was a huge deal for us not being able to get off the field and prevent some scores. Haynes King, 4 interceptions. Can't really win if you're going to throw 4 picks, though. So,
yeah, and I think that's kind of one of those cases where you see we need to make something happen kind of stack up. Not trying to absolve everything, but I don't know. It seemed like it accelerated into the later stages of the game where it's hey, that we're trying to, they were getting a little bit forcing it with the old ball. Kind of a bummer being well, you kind of just toss it out and start over. But I think this is where, it's Coach Key and stuff in his press conferences has been very wash it, move on to the next week. Wins, wash it, move on to the next week.
Yep.
But time to put the money where the mouth is. I'm not convinced Syracuse is all that equipped currently. It seems like they're kind of sliding into the end of the season here. Yes, they did bounce back last week with a needed win against Pitt. But then again, I'm not convinced Pitt is all that good either.
Not a representative win, I would say, for much of anything there. And they're 5-5. They're 5-5 as well. So they're playing for the same thing.
5-5, but have not looked terribly competitive in most ACC games.
I'll go back to the first quarter of this game. So we had our touchdown. It was only a 25-yard drive. And then Clemson's next drive, they had a 3rd and 2 converted.
Yep.
And then they had a 3rd and 13 that wasn't converted. Or they had a 3rd and 4 converted by Will Shipley, which was then pulled back on an unsportsmanlike. They eventually got that on a 3rd and 2 by Will Shipley. And then they had a 3rd and 13 that Briningstool, their tight end, was not able to convert, got 7 yards. And then their 4th and 7 was caught by Collins and then got them into the red zone. And then they later scored that touchdown. And they had another third. This drive, they had a 3rd and 4 converted, a 3rd and 2 converted that was pulled back, a 3rd and 13 not converted, but the 4th and 7 was converted, and then a 3rd and 6 that wasn't, but the 4th and 1 was. And so they had 2 4th down conversions on that drive. All get in that that middle zone where it's just gotta get you don't punt it. You don't punt it because that just doesn't make sense. You may as well go for it, but then you can't get the field goal either. And then they got them to 7-7, and then we got 3 out on our next drive. And then we had Jamal Haynes had a 40-yard run that when we were only down 1 score that was okay, maybe got something here. Finally got the big chunk run, made nothing of it. We had 2 or 3 of those plays we couldn't capitalize on.
The capitalization, we talked about some drops there. I do want to point out that excluding that fake punt, at one point, Clemson was 4 for 4 on converting 4th downs.
Yeah.
Giving teams that many second chances while also, just being that hair off on offense. Yeah, that's how you go in a 4 or 5 touchdown.
Yeah,
touchdown hole.
It's not great. That great at all. So I don't think we need to belabor this that much because after that it was a lot of the same of not moving the ball enough, maybe 1 or 2 chunk plays here and there, and untimely picks by Haynes King that just kind of derailed the whole game. So there's a 17-point EPA difference. It's not great. What you got?
If anybody would like us to belabor any of these points anymore, feel free to ask a question in the mailbag. Because I don't think us talking in circles about similar points in which we're agreeing. You hopefully agree. Maybe you have a little bit of a different nuance. If so, feel free to drop a comment or whatnot. But I don't think we learned too much about this team. I think the one thing that I take away going forward is I am excited for the to hire a new defensive coordinator, clean sheet this offseason.
Yes, that would be huge. Even getting to a bowl. I mean, in hindsight, us getting to a bowl game and potentially winning a bowl game, knowing the defensive issues, that's going to be I mean, we're already at the 2 steps forward.
We've raised the floor.
Yes, the floor is there.
We've raised the floor.
Getting to 5 wins, I think for all of us, Mark says okay, we have done a positive this year already. We've crossed that threshold. Now it's at the point where get to the bowl game.
Extra month of practice.
Yeah. That will be very, very important. All right. This coming Saturday, November 17th, the ACC has 4 3:30 games. So we got put at the 8:00 slot against Syracuse at Bobby Dodd Stadium. We are 5-5. We have to win this game because we play Georgia next week or the week after. And we probably aren't going to win that, to be completely honest, as we all know.
They appear to have figured things out, which
they kind of steamrolled Ole Miss. And it made them look bad. They made Ole Miss look bad yesterday. So we really need to beat this. We did win the Syracuse game. There's no 2 ways about it. Syracuse needs to win this game as well, so that we can go bowling or they can go. Someone's going bowling. That's all we know. Someone's going bowling after Saturday.
The bowl.
yes. The bowl to bowl.
Yeah.
So that's what's going to happen there. We'll all be there. It's going to be a fun day. I'm kind of glad it's at 8:00 because that means we can sort in some friends. You can do a Friendsgiving at lunchtime and still go to the game. You can do both on Saturday.
Have an evening wedding, so I can't be there.
Oh,
fall weddings are okay, people. Fall weddings are okay. I want to put that out there.
On Sundays.
I will not be there. I'll be following along, of course. But then it's between two tech grads who are undoubtedly the reason that I'm at Georgia Tech. So I will be at their wedding celebrating them, but they're in spirit.
How delightful. Good for them. Congrats to them as well. Yes. All right, let's move on to cross country, Jake. We had NCAA South Regionals.
Yes, pretty quick tour around here. The women finished 6th. That's kind of where we prognosticated them to be relative to the number of ranked teams that were above them as of last week. Mary Brady did come in 34th. She was the leader for Tech. Grace Driscoll was in 35th. So that was that was cool. They had 3 in the top 50 overall. The men, not so great. They finished 12th in the region. I think they probably agree that that's probably a little bit lower than one might prognosticate, but that's kind of how the cookie crumbles at some points. I'd say pretty solid showing for the ladies. I do want to shout that out in the, pretty good when you could get 3 in the top 50 in an event that has like 18 schools in it. So
yeah, for sure.
They got NCAA championships next, but I don't think anybody got any at-larges. So that means we will see them in indoor track season in January.
Yep. All right. Sounds good. So we'll catch up to them in January. Men's tennis. They're off for winter break, but some Andres Martin potential news here.
Yeah, he's active in the Challenger Cup circuit out in, I believe, Calgary this week. What I was seeing was he's playing Liam Draxel. Liam Draxel is a top 430, top 430 player in the I guess this is ITA Nationals. I'm on a site called Tennis Tonic, some place where apparently you could see head-to-head matchups for things. Andres Martin was ranked 733. The odds are prognosticating towards Draxel. I don't know if this has any implications for his college eligibility.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Challenger Cups.
Not really sure how that works.
Challengers don't really pay you anything. Like those are they're the low tiers for a reason. You got to fight to get out of those. So I don't know if you can. Yeah, we keep saying we don't know where these guys are. Are they still in Tunisia? Where have they gone? We at least know where Andres
He's on the roster still.
That's the thing. Okay, I need to ask them some questions. We need to figure this out. So we'll have some answers here on what the heck's going on with men's tennis and why they're on the roster but seemingly playing pro events at the same time still. So
I think the Tunisia one was a pro-ish event too.
It seemed pro. Yeah, it seemed like one. So, and they there was a Tunisian tournament. There's probably gonna be some. I don't remember who was in that, but they get some guys. So, okay.
Yeah.
Let's take a short break and then we'll come back with basketball.
Yes, absolutely. So, talking section 103, 3 new designs this week. Those are Miles Kelly NIL shirts. They're in white and gold, and also a gold general Georgia Tech basketball. Buzz with a basketball. What's not to love? Spinning it on his pointer finger. That's new from Section 103. As always, free shipping on orders over $70. Check them out at section103.com and at Section 103 on Twitter. Jack, back to you.
Basketball time. Okay, so the men and women have both kicked off their seasons past their exhibition games. The men played 2 games. The women played 2 games this past week. Let's get going with the men first. They started off against Georgia Southern, winning 84-62. Jake, I didn't really catch much of this. So what was this is the first Damon Stoudemire game. Andre Dickens was at the game, same with President Cabrera. This was the official beginning of whatever this new era is going to be with Coach Stoudemire. So, what were your first impressions of this team?
Yeah, I watched basically every second of this game, and I think the big takeaway was that Tech has some pretty solid depth. Actually, I think in both games, Debo Coleman has come off the bench, which was pretty surprising to me. Tyjon Claude, Tafarik Apare got the start at forward. Miles Kelly, Kawasi Reeves, and Amari Abram got the start at guard. Among those, Miles Kelly seems to, and this is something that's certainly applicable to the Howard game as well, kind of seems to have asserted himself as the guy. I'm sure that that's probably something that we touched on last week is quote unquote, whose team is it going to be? But Miles Kelly, he's averaging 26 points a game. He had 25 and 27. So very balanced between those 2 performances. But in Georgia Southern specifically, Tech was really close at the end of the half. They were down a little bit. There's some, back and forth earlier. There's 6 ties and 13 lead changes in the game. And they went into the half leading by 1. Georgia Southern scored a very symmetrical 31 points per half. The difference was in the second half, Georgia Tech really was, I'd say, pretty effective. Their shots were falling a decent bit more. They shot 53% from free throws, 33 and 26 from field goal and 3-point in the first. And in the second, they were 56% field goal percentage, 64% from 3, and 75% from the free throw line. It's a tale of 2 halves. They're going to take a lot of shots. This offense is definitely, having now seen it in person twice, definitely faster pace than pass or ball that we've been playing the past couple years. I would say that the first half was certainly not efficient, but going 13 from 29 overall from three, that'll rack up some points. 27 for 60 in terms of made field goals is pretty solid as well. It's mainly the line, I think, that you got to clean up from the first game, and that's certainly something we'll talk about in the second. But give me one more sec just to kind of round out the other things that jump off the page. This team is not very disciplined yet. I don't think that's unreasonable to say. Miles and Debo both committed technical fouls against Georgia Southern. They drew 20 fouls, Georgia Tech did, but they gave up 16. The first half of the Georgia Southern game was pretty sloppy. They did have 15 offensive rebounds and 22 defensive, but only out rebounded the other team, the Eagles, 37-33. Nothing too crazy there. And they did commit 13 turnovers. They forced a lot or just happened into reasonably good turnover luck. And we'll talk about that again as it relates to Howard, since, we were both there and could kind of bounce a little bit off of each other there a little bit more. But in terms of production, Debo coming off the bench in both games, a big chunk of the offense, Miles Kelly, of course, and Kawasi Reeves, I think, has emerged as, I'd say, like the perhaps who's a third superhero to a band of two,
Reeves, he's the third guy. He's becoming the third guy for sure.
And then the number one forward, almost by a pretty sizable margin, is Tyjon Claude. He had 19 points against Howard, and I believe he was in double figures against Georgia Southern. He had 10 against Southern. He was good between the two. He had 5 offensive and defensive rebounds apiece against Southern. 3 assists. I'd say that's pretty good. And he drew 5 fouls without committing any in the first game, and was he did have 5 fouls in the second game, so I guess perfectly balanced as all things should be. But again, had a number of assists, and I don't know. I was pretty impressed with both Claude and Reeves. I think after that, Gapari, I don't really know what we're seeing there too much yet. Amari Abram, not particularly efficient, but Sturdivant and Coleman coming in off the bench have really been, especially Debo, Jack. I think it was pretty clear that those two guys had, and I've had my qualms with Sturdivant over the years in terms of just having a huge volume, but at least his shots were going in. He had double figures in the Howard game, and he was pretty close to it as well in the Georgia Southern game, on top of 6 assists and a couple of rebounds. So can't really complain about that performance across 27 minutes. Yeah,
free throw line's been an issue. Big note in the Howard game. Gapari is definitely still. I mean, remember what Ace has told us last week? He's like, don't look at his numbers, just look at what he looks like and how he plays. And it's like he's got a point there. I mean, this is a young dude, so he's gonna. Yeah. He only played like 10 minutes. He played 2 minutes in the second half against Howard. So it is. The trial run is happening now. I don't know how much he'll get outside of that. He seemed to play his way off the court against Howard. Georgia Southern. They shot 9 of 14 from 3 in the second half. Like that'll win you. That wins you games. Twice, couple 3 times now. Coach Stoudemire has noted that this is the only team that he has coached where he's walked in the door and the offense was ahead of the defense. So it's I
would say that is very true.
Yes.
Georgia Tech has scored in the 4 halves they've played over 40. We used to meme on this podcast about the quest for 40 points in a game, and they've done that in a half 3 out of the 4 times. Yeah, that's pretty good offensive production. Yeah, from the free throw line, definitely needs work. They were 16 for 27 against Howard from the line. Miles Kelly, uncharacteristically poor.
It was so weird. This guy missed 6 free throws all of 2022, 2023. He missed 5 in that game.
Yeah,
was so strange. So strange.
Like, it's not a lack of skill thing. We know he's got it.
No,
it's just something. Like maybe he had a bunch of this was my Haynes King theory. Maybe he had a bunch of midterms this week.
I forgot to bring that up in the football section. Like, all right, come on, professors. Yes, it's Georgia Tech, but like, do you have your Clemson week scheduled out here? Do you know who we're playing any given week?
Yeah. Again, all speculation on my part. I do want to highlight it against Howard. Tech drew 19 fouls, but they also committed 19 fouls. Again, a little sloppy. Where that changed the game, though, is in the second, Georgia Tech went into the half down 6 to Howard, 47-41. The largest lead by Howard was 14, about 3 minutes into the second.
I'll note that second half. Like when I was there, it felt like there was really slip in there. Like it wasn't a great finish to the first half, and then they were just allowed a free dunk down the lane on Howard's first possession, which was just like, what in the world? Called a timeout. And then it did seem to get better because then Debo got called for a flagrant or whatever the equivalent is in college. I forgot if they have flagrant fouls or not, but Howard had free throws and the possession afterwards. And then
weirdly, that's not in the score sheet, but that definitely happened because we saw that happen live with our eyes.
Yes, that happened. They didn't. I don't know what they announced in the stadium, but and then 11-0 run, and Threebo came alive and tied it up at 59 at the 11:44 mark. So
I want to say there, not just the offense getting hot, 11-0, but Howard also got incredibly sloppy. They turned the ball over like 5 times in 6 possessions and went they had multiple 5-minute long scoring. I wish I had the scoring streak notes I should have just written it down because there was multiple long scoring droughts for Howard, but also they got really sloppy foul wise. Campbell,
they had 2 guys foul out in that second half, which was really helpful for us, especially in those last 5 minutes.
Yes, Dom Campbell was not a huge offensive output for them. He only had 4 points, but he's like a true center in, I guess, a true 5 and kind of the traditional way to think about it. And he was causing, I'd say, a decent amount of havoc in the lane. He only really had 4 rebounds, so but definitely was making his presence felt, I would say, as well as their, I think, a reasonable number 2, number 3 type guy, Bryce Harris. I think he got the start at the 1, but he had 17 points, drew 4 fouls, was doing well rebounding. Also, oh my goodness, Tech needs to lock in on the old rebound side of the board.
That wasn't great.
Not ideal there, but like I said,
that second half was weird for me because remember we were talking last week how they saw the start shot from the Clark Atlantic game. And it was layups and threes. And then Howard game was a bunch of floaters and mid-range stuff. They were just trying to get to the bucket, but there was a lot of just Servant would pull up, Miles would pull up and try to get.
I call that Kyle time.
Yeah, it was really different. But but I think what came out of the press conference was we're like, okay, no, they have different ways to score if they need it. Like if the threes aren't working,
they needed it.
Yeah, and they absolutely needed it. Yeah, it was big time. I mean, the free throws were bad for both teams. I'll note Howard also missed a bunch, so. Honestly, both teams could have won and lost this game in various ways. So calling this game a toss-up, I don't think is an incorrect way to go about this game. Howard's good. They made the tournament last week. They won their conference, and they're going to probably win their conference again this year. So that was not a bad team and not a bad test at all to have early in the season.
Well, and they're scrappy. They're young. They had this. I don't want to say it's a Super Bowl for them. Actually, I shouldn't say they're young. They're experienced. They're scrappy, and this is a big game. Like they're playing at the ACC. They're in Atlanta. Big weekend plans too. They're Howard staff, and I think I read this in a John Feinstein book, has a pretty storied tradition of making their road trips have big meaning for players, and in this case, going to see Andrew Young, who I believe is a Howard grad himself, but working that into just making basketball an enriching experience, which I absolutely think
really
is
cool.
a tremendous thing for a staff to, coaches can say all the time about, we believe in molding our young men and women into this is saying hey, this important icon man, who has nothing to do really with basketball, but is somebody that you need to learn from. That's incredible. And hats off to them. I will say, like I said, the turnovers did pile up in the second half. I think that's a depth thing, partially a foul trouble thing. Also, but it comes out in the score sheet, I say, in that Howard outshot Georgia Tech. They were 50% field goals in general, 28.6 from 3, and 67.9 from the line. Georgia Tech was 44, 22, and 59 respectively. The difference there is turnovers and giving away the ball. And most egregious of this was actually probably a Georgia Tech turnover. Howard, with about 8-ish seconds left on the clock, drains a deep, just chuck it up
really
kind
deep
of
three. Really deep three, yeah.
To cut the lead from 82 to 85. And then Tech commits an egregious turnover and is only saved because there's only about 2 seconds left on the clock. They set up for a pretty shot, but about as good as you can expect.
Howard got a heave
from
off.
That.
They had a shot. They put the ball in the air with the clock expiring to tie, which should not have happened. That just shouldn't have happened whatsoever. Howard was fouling. Howard was fouling with like 2 minutes left, and still made, and it kind of worked. It worked. It's rare you see the fouling actually like worked that well, and that they didn't win, but they did what they needed to do.
We only led for 7.5 minutes of this game.
Yeah, front end and the back end, which I guess back end's the most important part. Yeah, only an 88-85 win over the Howard Bison. They do only have one
game
in the next week, and that is Tuesday at home against UMass Lowell. So the Northeasterner school coming down here. So that's fun. Any other last notes? I mean, I'll note one more thing that Damon said. Like, Lance Terry's still out. I forgot who the other guy that's still out, his name. But they're probably going to play. And Damon he emphasized in the press conference after the Howard game that he's like, if I've got guys that could play, they're going to play. Rotations is not a thing he's seems to be in favor of. So I would not be surprised if we're going to see 12 guys playing in these games down the line here. So that'll be interesting to see and see how that plays out.
And I think that's something that this is the last point I did want to make. So thank you for teeing me up for that. I think that is the reason we've seen, Sturdivant and Debo come off the bench is like get different guys in
and Gapari starting
with just different people. Yeah. I mean, like this is why you have a non-con season is to get people experience and get people in. And, if you got 10 men who you think might play, getting Evie Duana 6 minutes of playing time and, he got one shot, he made it. That's something that could pay off in the future. Okay. So and also I will say in the Howard game, Tech did do a relatively good job turning over protecting the ball. So even if they weren't super effective in the line, they didn't get their pockets picked too much. There were a couple just ball go out of bounds type turnovers, but there were positives to draw. We'll see how it plays out. You got to win the UMass Lowell game, and we'll talk about it next week, hopefully on the other side.
But we will. Women's basketball, they had 2 games this week as well. They started on this past Monday, so 6 days ago at the time of recording, versus Coastal Carolina. This was their Education Day game. The game was at 11 a.m. There was almost 5,000 Atlanta public school kids who were part of the buzzer reader program, and they all basically earned this as a field trip to go, and some of the kids who had read the most hours got acknowledged on the court. Jake, I have never been in a louder building in my life. O'Keefe was loud. This was 3 days after we beat Louisville and O'Keefe. That Saturday, I woke up and my ears were not working properly whatsoever. And then I get the rest day on Saturday, lighter day on Sunday with volleyball. And then that day, it was just the highest pitch screams for in 2 hours straight. It was rough in there, but thankfully their team was doing so well that was warranting all the screams. They won 83-53 in front of 4,900 people, which is the second most. It was the second highest attended game for women's basketball in McCamish Pavilion. The opening,
I got that one wrong. I got this trivia back wrong.
You did. You would think so. It was the first game in McCamish was higher. Was the highest so far. You would think that when we played UConn, which drew a lot of people, because UConn also had a local Olivia Nelson was on UConn's team, so that drew a lot of local folks. That only had 4,500 people. This game had 4,936 or something like that. So beat it by a few hundred.
I think the women's basketball opener at McCamish period 10 years ago, I think that was a doubleheader with the men, if I recall correctly. Or a twilight type situation.
That's what the team was saying was the highest one, the only one. So this was the second highest attended match. It was Coastal Carolina. But it was fun nonetheless. They looked good. Really dynamic offense. Rusne Agostinate ended up playing a lot of minutes because Kara Dunn went out in the first minute, and she's hurt. She did not play yesterday against Furman. I did not watch that Furman game because I was in Clemson, so I don't really know what happened other than we won by a lot.
We took care of business.
We took care of business. So I don't have much to say for either game beyond the offense looks good. They're faster. They're moving faster like they wanted to. If you listen to my interview with Coach Alverson, that's a big point for them, is to get moving fast and have high pace. And they have a lot of pace right now.
And I think that's super exemplified by the third quarter against Furman. Tech scored 30 points in a quarter, which is great to see. Obviously, they finished with 91. This isn't your former self's women's basketball team at Georgia Tech. I reflect on like the 2016, 2017, like let's grind them into pace and win 36-25, kind of like George Mikan basketball.
I mean, yeah, no, that was us. That was us 2 years ago. Was that just play defense, burn shot clock for the other team, and get your buckets down low and rough and tough ways. And now it's much more fluid, much more dynamic, much quicker. Still want that defensive identity, but they've got like 7 offensive weapons now, which is just so new, so different for a Nell team. But hey, they can do it well. They're doing it well.
Jack, there is one thing that Georgia Tech is yet to do this year. It has to do with scoring and offense. I guess defense. What is Georgia Tech's current? I guess, actually, no, I've just blown it if I was going to ask about the streak. Georgia Tech is yet to be outscored in a quarter. I'll just say it. Like, they have outscored the opponents in every quarter they have played thus far this year.
Wait, across sports?
No.
Oh, just women's basketball.
Women's basketball.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, what? Hold on.
Including the exhibition game.
Yes.
They are 12 for 12 in outscoring their opponents. They got close against Coastal Carolina being outscored in the third. But
yeah,
that's a good spot. They led for all but 36 seconds of the season so far.
Fantastic. So just that was like the first few seconds against Coastal and the first few against Furman, because they got early buckets in both of those. They will never beat the game against Syracuse in 2021, I want to say, when they had an administrative technical free throw at the beginning of the game.
One of my
linemen sunk both of them, so they were up 2-0 and then never lost the lead. So the scoreline said time led 40 minutes.
That was the Dina homecoming game in the Carrier Dome, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was Strap. Yeah, that was Strap, and his return came at the Carrier Dome. That was funny.
I was going to say one other thing about the Coastal game that I wanted. I wanted to highlight that Georgia Tech was, I'd say, relatively good from the free throw line for how
they got better there. That's been a note for us. Like, they just need to just generally just. Last year they were better at the line by a lot. Like, they were tops in ACC at the line last year, which was one of the best teams at the line. Rebounding was
something I've had my eyes on.
Rebounding was more the thing for Nell after the Coastal game. She thought that could be better. I wouldn't say Furman's representation of if they got better yet. So we'll see. They play this coming Thursday at Rice. They're going to go to Houston and play at Rice. And so we'll have they'll get their first taste of some road action. And then on Sunday, I will not be going to this game because there's volleyball, but I think we'll try to record after it's done, or maybe a little bit later. They host Kennesaw State. So in theory, should be beating Kennesaw State. I have no idea how good Rice is.
That game has been a throttling in the past.
Yeah, Kennesaw State not done much.
We've gone to Houston a couple of times in the last couple of years. Given that we've recruited and successfully landed players from out there, I suspect that this is a good we told you you'd be able to come see that, and then getting into the Texas.
Yeah, multiple Texans.
The Texas field there.
Multiple Texans on this team. So it's not.
Including Nell, I think, because she's Stephen F. Austin for school, wasn't she?
True. Yeah.
But anyways. So I think this is mostly a recruiting thing. Rice is generally, I think, pretty solid, but I mean, it's AAC basketball. So not quite what you're getting in ACC basketball, but we'll get there when we get there. I was going to say, in general, I think Tech, limiting turnovers for the most part, could be a little bit cleaner in that regard. Otherwise, and probably a little bit more efficient, from three. I'd like to see, but other than that, they went 8 for 9 for free throws again against Furman. So I think clean up the threes. Make your makeable shots, and I've got no complaints yet. Nell noted the rebounding thing, totally plays out watching the tape back. But, one thing at a time, I suppose.
Yep. We'll see how they play against Rice. All right, last one, and then we're out of here. Volleyball. We're not going to go too long here either. They had one match this past week. They didn't have to play today, which today being Sunday. They played Friday. They needed it. It was the second top 10 match of the season, as in top 10 versus top 10. They moved up to number 8 in the AVCA rankings after beating Louisville 2 weekends ago at home in a sweep. Wait, they swept it? Yeah, they swept that.
They will probably be moving out of the
number
top 10,
7. Number 7 Pitt came to town, and I used the word obliterated in my recap headline, and I don't think I think that remains very accurate. I don't know if y'all remember. If you do remember, we played them earlier this season. We were up 2-0. This was after Liv Mogridge had gotten hurt, and we were up 2-0 on them. We had came back and down, like Pitt won the race to 20 in the first 2 sets, and we managed to win the first 2 sets. And then they cooked us so hard in the last 3 sets of that match. None of them were close in the slightest. Even the
cooking has continued.
The cooking has. It is we are inedible with how much we have been cooked at this point, and it continued this past Friday. Pitt scored the first 10 points of the first set. They were up 10-0 the first set. Thankfully, there's 5 theoretical sets, so that I wouldn't say that ended the game right there, but it was like the last match never ended, and they just kept going. Like there was no clear discontinuation that there was a match a month ago and then a match this month. They felt like the exact same match.
Jack, I say only hit 300 in the first.
I know.
And won, 25-13. Pitt hit 524 and 542 going away in the second and the third. It's very difficult to state how much of a beatdown that is.
There was no defense played by us.
Team.
There was just in general no defense played by us. Tamara Otene had a combined 15 errors between attacking and blocking and digging. She hit a negative. We were a negative. Our attack as a team was negative in the first set, which I don't think we've done this year. Maybe against one of those other Pitt games, the earlier Pitt game, or somewhere else potentially. But it was by and away, in all things considered, the worst match and the worst we have looked all season. I'll note, Liv Mogridge did warm up. She was a full participant in warm-ups, and she did not play. Our middle blocking was non-existent. We had 2 total, and I think Bertolina was one of them, so not even a blocker. Mendez had to come out for some time. Yeah. There was just nothing. There was tiny stretches in the 6-2 where Manyang was a little bit helpful. It didn't really do much. Suarez was okay. She started the third set again, so D'Amico kind of played her way out of another match again. So I don't want to say there's anything to really take from this outside of Pitt's just really freaking good, and we just had the worst day at the office of the season by far. And thank goodness we play teams that aren't ranked next week, because we need to have something to recover with.
I want to give Bianca Pertolino her flowers.
She was great. She
hit 579.
Against
Pitt, no less.
She was hitting 800. She was hitting over 800 after the first 2 sets. Like she was literally the only thing truly working for us, in terms of any kind of offensive weapon whatsoever. Pitt was just much taller than us. They still are. They have been taller than us the whole time. But that's been if you can have a size mismatch against us, we do not adapt well, and it happened again. Miami did that to us earlier this season. Florida State clearly did it here. Louisville wasn't that tall, kind of were able to get around them. Georgia killed us because they had Sophie Turner. Or not Sophie Turner. That's the actress. Forgot her name already. Either way, big teams can kill us. So that's going to be a thing to look out for if you just want to do some quick scouting in our future matches here, especially if once we get into the NCAA tournament. Just look at how big our middle blockers are compared to their middle blockers, whoever we end up playing, and that'll give you a sense of, not necessarily tell you what the match is going to be like, but it's going to be a great indicator of where our weaknesses are going to be. And
Jack, I got a question.
Yes.
They started this while I was still at work, very rude. It was a 5 p.m.
Yeah, so
but
yeah,
on the main ACC network.
Yes,
how did the attendance hold up? I mean, like I get they probably filled more students
no
in
problems, no
because
problems
like,
whatsoever with it.
really.
Yeah,
Okay,
it was just
okay.
fine. They were turning away students. Jolene Aiken, who's the Title IX coordinator for Georgia Tech, and tends to like be like the on-site
the official. Just
the
official Bobby, we can jam more students in
basically
facility.
if you ever have had someone come to you at a match and was like, hey, there's a seat over here, that was probably Jolene doing that for you, and she's a very sweet lady. And she was cramming students in wherever she could find spots to put them in. So crowd not a problem at all. I mean, it was quiet as heck at the end of that match because it was clear what was happening. So
I mean, they made their statement early. That
they did. I mean, they sucked the wind out of that of O'Keefe super early. It was a 10-0 run. Oates didn't do well. Pimentel surface error. Mannion got lucky on a kill. We had one run, but it was it was over. In the third set, we at least had a lead at 15-12. We had a 3-point lead in the third set. Got to 15 first, which felt nice. Like it felt like that was the only like normal feeling set that we had in terms of like, okay, they're actually kind of like playing like themselves. Otane was getting some rockets in. And then Pitt went on a 9-point run.
Georgia Tech does not control its own destiny anymore, high level. I will say Florida State sets up rather nicely down the stretch. They go to North Carolina and they get Notre Dame at home. Neither of those teams are at the top of the.
They should kill both of those teams.
Yeah, I was trying to be political about it, but meanwhile, Pitt and Georgia Tech both get Louisville again. Pitt also has Miami again, who is pretty good. And Georgia Tech also gets Miami again as well. Pitt, if they win out, would tie Florida State. So Pitt and Louisville theoretically will break the theoretical tie between the two of them. I assume then that it would be Florida State and then the winner of Pitt Louisville for the shared ACC crown. In that scenario, Tech can finish as high as 15-3.
Florida State is huge Tech fans right now because if we beat Louisville again somehow and Louisville beats Pitt, they're sitting alone.
They're alone.
They're sitting alone. Which is just not what we had on paper, but easy schedule's an easy schedule, man.
I said that they'd be a tournament team at the beginning of the year. I maintain, but Florida State and Miami should, barring all things considered, be considered tournament teams. But I mean, if you look at the schedule, they do get Miami twice. They got Tech once. I believe they got Louisville once, and I believe they got Pitt once. So that'll be your difference right there.
I would say usually ACC, you might want to rethink how you do the scheduling thing so you don't cannibalize the top like this and have your auto bid. I mean, maybe it's good you have your auto bid that's someone else, but at the same time, a little school called Stanford and their volleyball team is joining the conference next year, and that's a top 10 team. So we're gonna have arguably 4 top 10 level teams next season in the ACC. So I don't know how the schedule is going to work. I hope we don't have to travel to California more than one. I mean, we want to travel more than one time. There's no way they make us do that twice. But that's going to be some really interesting if they set up a specific system or what. Like softball has a specific rotation that it does. Volleyball doesn't really have that. Baseball kind of does. The SEC just implemented a system for their baseball scheduling. So there's going to be some just theoretical down the line questions. How this schedule pans out next year, it can be really determinative of who's going to end up winning the tournament, or winning the conference as a whole, and how that impacts who gets in the tournament too. So there's weird machinations, but I mean, right now, if I'm a betting man, Florida State for the title,
I think the baseball, we know baseball when baseball comes, but I think in baseball you kind of have to go divisionless, don't you? Because right now how it works is you have a protected cross-divisional rival. That's Georgia Tech and Clemson. Duh. You play everyone in the Coastal, and you play 3 of the other 6 teams in the Atlantic one year, and then you flip the next year. So it makes a lot of sense, right? Because you got 10 conference weekends. So we'll see what happens there. SMU, I believe, does not have a baseball team, so they theoretically only have to add 1 to each side. But unless you go to 11, conference weekend?
Will SMU or somewhere in Dallas become like? I wonder how many ACC games are going to take place in Globe Life Park.
Hopefully zero.
As this is central. Like I, that's going to be so weird. Okay, we're off topic now.
Yeah.
So, anyways, our volleyball's next action will be on Friday. They're going to Miami, and then their final home game, pending NCAA tournament stuff, is against Syracuse this coming Sunday. That is senior night. So if you want to see, oh shoot, who are our seniors? Is anyone actually going to get? Wait a second. Help me out here. Is anyone going to? Oh, Paolo Pimentel. This will be Paolo Pimentel's theoretical final game on campus. So sad, but probably not considering we're top fifth. We're 8th right now. We'd have to lose out basically. I think to not host the latest like. And
Jack,
I'm just saying.
All this confidence.
Syracuse is on the schedule still, sir. So yeah, it'll be. I think the trend lines are pointing that direction. We'll see what really happens with the committee. If you go to the NCAA.com, they have usually some pretty good like projections on who might host and what the tournament might look like right now, as much as that can be predicted, taking in the NCAA committee's criteria. So I haven't checked to see if there's if there's this one as check tomorrow. There might be a new one there. So that's all I got there. Jake, one more news and notes before we go to ACC tasting.
Yes, swimming and diving is in action in Athens Thursday through Saturday. I think they usually stream the UGA invite, but keep an eye out there for SEC Network Plus Extra, whatever the ESPN3 SEC Network overlay is.
Sounds good. Maybe I'll catch some of that on the television. Okay, ACC football games this coming weekend. Let's start with Thursday. Pitt is hosting Boston College. Jake, Pitt played Syracuse, lost to Syracuse last week. So, as we said, not really a predictor of what was going on, but what you got here?
Yeah, I'm thinking Boston College here. It's in their building. They're playing pretty well.
Yeah, would agree. Miami is playing Louisville at noon on Saturday. Miami is the host team here. Before the Clemson game, this was a critical game in terms of our life to make the ACC championship game. But now we are fully out of contention there. So does not really impact Tech anymore. Louisville, I do think, will pull away with this. They just barely got past Virginia, but they end up doing so pretty convincingly. So I got them. All right, Jake, Virginia versus Duke.
Both of these teams are kind of in I don't want to say in odd spots, but Duke's definitely cooled off after a hot start to the year. I think is a political way to put that one. UVA, I think, had I believe they had. Oh my goodness, ESPN is playing music in my headset now. UVA has a little bit more rest, but I still don't think the talent differential is there, especially if Tony Muskett remains out, as we believe he is based on our game. So would definitely lean Duke there.
Notre Dame hosting Wake Forest, 3:30 game. There's 4 3:30 ACC games this coming Saturday. Notre Dame should clean house pretty easily with Wake Forest. Jake, Clemson hosts their 3rd straight game this coming weekend. They're hosting North Carolina, who at the SMP, the college football playoff rankings have not come out yet. So as of now, they are hosting the 24th ranked North Carolina Tar Heels.
Yeah, North Carolina kind of was in a squeaker last week. I think if it is track meet-ish, it kind of is an anyone's ball game scenario, but it's hard to go into Death Valley and win. And if Clemson can capitalize based on what I believe to be some upgrades in terms of their offensive and frankly defensive performance last week, I think that one goes to the Tigers.
I would say so as well. Virginia Tech hosts NC State, who I was looking at NC State's points scored and points allowed numbers. They are extremely Iowa-ish, and I had no idea. Don't know how I missed that, but that'd be interesting for them. So, but got the Blacksburg environment. I think I might go NC State here, honestly. They're sitting above us right now in the conference. Seems like a road, just a road sneaker or something like that.
I don't know if this changes your thought, but
okay.
MJ Morris is still in the he benched redshirted himself, something like that.
Oh, I forgot about that whole thing. Oh, yes, with their quarterback. Oh, in that case, I don't know. Someone flip a coin for me. You guys decide at home for me. Florida State hosts North Alabama, Jake. Well, I don't think we need to say who's going to win that game because that was a little obvious. 6:30 start on the CW, and then our game is at 8 o'clock to round out the ACC slate. Sicko's picks of the week, Jake. You got me a Mississippi showdown.
Yes, I do. Southern Miss at Mississippi State. They both have losing records. I think Southern Miss has picked it up just a little bit, but I think Mississippi State's seat might be getting hot, if you will. And Southern Miss, I mean, they want nothing more than to go into Starkville and win, whether it's baseball, football, or any sport in which they get the chance. So I think it's definitely one to keep an interested eye on, if that's a good way to put that.
Well, sure. I do not have one listed as of now on the doc. I would say the fact that Kansas versus Kansas State's ranked, that's just generally pretty cool. But also you can go to Game on Paper and see all of the best sports stats out there. All right. I know you had made some trivia sort of something for me. What do you got?
Yes. So I was thinking about Miami because, playing Miami in volleyball coming up. I got to ask, there are two sports in which Georgia Tech has a lesser win percentage against Miami of Ohio than Miami, Florida. Name them. One, I will let you know, is a trick, but I want to see if you can catch on to why it's
expired sport.
Let's say never started in the first place sport.
What? Okay, interesting.
Think about Miami, Florida in that regard. They have one very obviously missing sport.
What, sailing?
Nope.
No? Okay.
Obviously missing. It kind of like how Georgia Tech doesn't have women's soccer.
Oh, they don't have swimming.
Nope.
What?
That wasn't what I was thinking of.
Oh, okay.
They don't have men's swimming. They do have women's swimming.
Oh.
They do not have a women's softball team at the University of
Oh.
Miami, Florida. So technically, Georgia Tech is undetermined against them. Georgia Tech has a better win percentage than Miami in every other sport except for one. In baseball, Georgia Tech is 3-0, volleyball 3-0, women's basketball 1-0, women's tennis 1-0. And in men's basketball, Georgia Tech is 0-1 all time against Miami of Ohio. So both kind of tricky, but odd things to think about. The plight of small numbers, the tyranny of small numbers, if you will. That's probably what I chalk
our continuing lifelong grind just to memorize the media guides of every Georgia Tech team. We'll one day be able to answer all these questions with
off the top of the head.
Off the top of we already know too much as it is.
Yes.
With that, thank you for the trivia. Thanks y'all for listening. As we mentioned on the top of the show, we've got some extra podcast content coming out this week with Carson Garrett from Survivor 44. We'll get our 200th episode. Something planned's going to be good. And make sure to check out our articles online as we go into this week's game against Syracuse, and we'll have recaps and previews of at least the basketball games. TBD on women's basketball. I got conflicts, so we'll see how that goes down. Nonetheless, actually, I should be back next week. We all should be back next week. Oh wait, I won't be. Ha! You're not gonna have me next week. So, anyways, this was fun. Jake, take us home.
Yeah. As always, you can find that extra content at fromtherumbleseat.com via email from therumbleseat@gmail.com. Comment, give us feedback. We appreciate it. If you want to hear other items from yours truly, as well as the rest of our staff. In the meantime, you can find us at FTR's blog, at JGrant98, and at Jack Nicholas on Twitter. You can find Section 103 there as well, at Section 103 and Section103.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube at From the Rumble Seat. And you can find these podcasts wherever fine podcasts are distributed. We do appreciate the word of mouth. It is the most powerful way to find us and tell others about us. But in the meantime, we will talk to you, I guess, whenever Scion's Extra comes out. So before next week. And in the meantime, good night, good luck, and go Jackets.